everybody, welcome back. It is Steve Fretzin here with the Be That Lawyer with Fretzin podcast. We are rocking and rolling every single week, twice a week, to give you what it takes to be that lawyer and someone who's going to be confident, organized, and a skilled rainmaker. And I think, I can't remember a time, and I've been in legal for 16 years, where lawyers have been busier and the unemployment rate is like basically zero. And there's just a ton of work. And I don't know, how that's happened, but it happened, and people are getting higher rates. And the other side effect is that I think lawyers are under some level of stress and in all this business that's coming in, which again is wonderful, better than the alternative, but it's how we deal with things like that. And I've got a phenomenal guest today. Arthur, how you doing, man?
Good. Thank you for having me.
All right, and we've got you with the outside forest behind you. So we said if a chipmunk or a squirrel attacks you, we'll know
Right.
why. Okay.
We'll see if I can handle it.
You ever had to wrangle a couple of chipmunks? We'll see how that, see if if you can man up for that. Anyway, wonderful. So let's as we do start off with our quote of the show, which is "Retire when your work is done."
Mhm.
And who's that quote by? And tell us a little bit about that. And Arthur, welcome to the show.
Thank you. That quote is by Lao Tzu, the writer of the second most translated book in the world after the Bible, which is the Tao Te Ching, which is 2,500 years old and outlines the Taoist philosophy. So most people have heard of the Taoist philosophy. Few people actually understand what it is.
Well, I think we're going to get into what it is in great detail, but why retire when the work is done? What that sounds like we should all be retiring at the end of a career, but I don't think that's what it's about.
No, no. What it means is when you've done your best, stop. Because everything you do after you've done your best is negative return. So understanding when to stop is one of the highest forms of spirituality. And the focus on that will keep you from being a perfectionist, right? When you understand you've done your best, everything you do after, it's not little micro gains, it's actually all negative.
Hmm. Well, the other part of it that, and again, everyone can have a different take on a quote like this, and it's, I think people are work. I mean, I get that I can work after hours, right? I
Hmm.
can write an article, I can take a call from a client. That's my choice. You don't have
Right.
to have that choice. It's my choice. And if I'm in the middle of something important, I'm not going to. But I think people don't know when to shut off the work, and I definitely know when to shut off the work. My brain stops working about 4:30, so that's what I
Good
know.
for
And I just,
you.
yeah, my brain stops working. It's not functioning as well as it should. And certainly by 8 o'clock, I definitely, but is that, so talk a little bit about retire when your work is done, and how people need to consider maybe shutting things down at some point.
Well, let's use your example, right? You're like, hey, I've gotten to a point in my life, I figured it out, my brain stops working at 4:30, right?
Yeah.
And if you're self-aware, you're like, all right, I'm done because everything I do afterwards is going to be suspect. I'm going to have to relook at this anyway. I'm going to be doing double and triple the work regardless, right?
Yeah.
Unless you fall victim to a favorite quote in America, push through the pain, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to be like, no, 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 I'm going to push myself. I'm going to push myself. And every time you do that, the amount of energy you have to expend like doubles and triples, and the output just nosedives, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So a warrior. So these practices were developed for warriors, and in the Tao, we have this understanding of yin and yang, or male and female, or light and dark, of complementary opposite energies, right? So the male energies, what you're talking about is my brain is working, I'm pushing through, I'm getting stuff done, everything else. The female energy is the recuperation, regeneration, and getting ready to go into battle again. And if you keep staying in the male energy and I just got to get it done and everything, and don't give yourself enough time to recuperate, the next day you're going to be destroyed. Dude, now when you're young, it's okay. Get closer to your 30s, that starts to be a problem. And further on, it just nosedives.
Yeah.
So knowing when to get into that state where you're recuperating is insanely important.
Yeah. And we're going to take a pretty deep dive, Arthur, into the spiritual side of performance and how people need to stay mentally fit and healthy. And just to give everybody a little bit of a background, Arthur Levitan is the spiritual director of California Tao. And give us a little bit. Your history is very fascinating. And would you just give everybody a little bit of a idea of what where you come from?
Sure. My parents brought me here when I was 9. Was born in Ukraine. Became an entrepreneur around 18, 19, and haven't stopped since. Started a bunch of different businesses. A lot of its focus was focused on technology and healthcare, and was very lucky to be involved in some really fantastic projects. And stumbled into a spiritual path in my early 20s. And it all stemmed from the mantra that my immigrant parents gave me, which is make money and you'll be happy. And when I started making fairly decent money in my early 20s and I still wasn't happy, I was really, really lucky to have discovered that that mantra didn't really work out for me. It works for some, it did not work for me.
Yeah.
And I studied Buddhism for 7 years, did a lot of practices of Buddhist practice, including fasting. My last fast too many years ago was for 22 days,
Wow.
and that changed my life. That rerouted the course of my life. And very shortly afterwards, I got a call from a random person that I maybe have met that made an offer that I said yes to, and I wound up buying a house across the street from a Taoist temple, not knowing what Taoism was.
Hmm.
Long story short, walked across the street, changed my life, started my own school in 2009, started traveling through China, studying with the Chinese teachers, and wound up getting ordained in the oldest Taoist temple in the world in Chengdu, China, which was pretty cool,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah.
So, and now for the last 10 years, I work with people, different walks of life, but mainly focused on CEOs, executives, and um, lawyers hire me in particular for their clients to help them get through crisis.
Hmm.
How do you manage your internal energy when life is falling apart? How do you get through the hardest things that are happening to you in your life? And how do you do it in a way that you not only survive, but you find ways of thriving in that environment? And that requires the warrior's teaching, like what Taoism was all about.
Yeah. So let's take a dive there into that then. So we've kind of agree that, people that are in positions like CEOs, executives, lawyers, that they have stress, they have struggles, they have, perfectionism issues, they have overachiever issues. They're just burning the candle on both ends. So why is that changed dramatically in your opinion in the last 10, 15, 20 years, or is it kind of always been that way?
No, it's gotten worse. And it's gotten worse because the pandemic accelerated Zoom, right? What we're doing now. And this is wonderful.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, a lot of people are by themselves, stuck at home, right? And working. And actually, companies love people working from home because they found out people work much more than they do in the office. But what's really important is that we as humans, if you look at our original design, if you go back, what made us really successful on this planet wasn't our teeth, wasn't our speed, wasn't our strength. It was our ability to be interdependent with each other.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, you have strengths and I have strengths. Together, we're much stronger than even both of us.
It's how things
And
get built. It's how our world has you know been developed the way that it has versus us all still living in a jungle.
it's how we were able to take down mammoths. It's how we became the apex predator on this planet. And now we're getting rid of that, right? So we're sitting at home away from our original design on a screen, and we're not moving, we're not breathing, and our health is deteriorating quickly. And most importantly, our emotional health is deteriorating because we're not making connections with humans.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that is certainly a major issue amongst the others that we could probably talk about, politically and on every level right now. There's stress coming at us.
Yes.
What are some of the things that um, people that are stressed and overthinking, what can they do to sort of clear their minds? Let's start getting into the weeds on how people can start fixing things or start looking at ways to clear a path.
So if you've ever been in a stressful situation, whether you're in traffic, whether you're taking a unpleasant phone call, or somebody's trying to punch you in the face, um,
That doesn't
one
happen
thing
every day, just every other day.
it what kind of guess have you had? Uh,
Oh, wow, you wouldn't believe. No, but I live in basically Mayberry. Like the worst thing that happens is a car gets broken into once a year. Or there's a bunch of teenagers running around. Like, it's like, there's people living
right.
in a lot more stressful environments than me.
And nevertheless, every time you get into your car, it's a stressful environment, even though you don't see it, because
Yeah.
the chances for death is quite high,
Yeah.
right? And it may not be the fact that you're a bad driver, but there are other people that are.
Sure.
So what happens to us on a physiological level is we stop breathing. We hold our breaths. And if you were to notice yourself next time you're in a bad phone call or stuck in traffic or angry or anxious or any of those emotions, you're holding your breath.
Mm,
And what you do most, you do best. So do this long enough, and you have trained your system to have very short breaths because you're almost always suffocating. Because instead of having a deep, long breath, you're always you're always gasping for air because you're always holding your breath.
mm.
So it doesn't start with an intellectual exercise. It starts with you being aware of how your breathing is in different moments of your day. And if you
Okay.
can stop long enough, and it doesn't take much, 30 seconds. That's the beauty of this. Stop long enough, put your hand on your chest, close your eyes, and take a deep breath and ask your chest to relax. As you're doing that, you will start training the system to breathe deeper. The deeper you breathe, the more you engage your parasympathetic system, which is the brake, right? The sympathetic system is the gas, pushing, pushing, pushing. The parasympathetic is, hey, let's slow down and relax,
Yeah.
right? So I had this amazing martial arts teacher in my life. He was incredible. And he gave me a mantra which I'll never forget my whole life. He says, the strongest punch can only happen with the slowest start. It is not the strength that matters, it is the change in acceleration.
Mm.
So the slower you start, the softer you are in the beginning, and the slower you start, the faster and the more powerfully you can accelerate to that finish, to the hard finish,
Mm.
right? And if you're always in a state of tense, short breath tense,
Yeah.
then you can only get harder. That delta of acceleration is tiny as compared to when you start slow, you can accelerate to that fast.
Is there a method of breathing so I can just slow down my breath, put my hand on my chest, close my eyes, and breathe for 30 seconds? Is it in through the nose, out through the mouth? Is it like give
Yes.
a little
Yeah,
bit more detail?
absolutely. So let me show.
Okay.
Put your hand on your chest.
Okay.
And as soon as I do that, several things happen because I've been practicing for so long. I'm instantly trying to relax my back, drop my shoulders, and I take a breath in through my nose and I imagine it falling all the way to the bottom of my stomach. And then I use my stomach to gently press in, and I want to send the breath all the way through my mouth, and I want it to be soft and slow. 3 breaths. As you start to do that, what happens is your body, after a little bit, obviously not the first time, starts to lower the shoulders, starts to clear the head, starts to ground your energy. And this is important. Why? Everything you're talking about is people when they sit in front of a screen or they're trying to push through a project or they're trying to get to to prepare for a client's case or whatever it is. They're all up here. They're all in their eyes and they're all in their head. And what happens energetically wise is you create the steam kettle effect where the energy just is stuck here and it creates heat. But by the way, your brain, when you work it a lot, all that electrical work creates heat. If you're not grounding that heat creates distortion in your thought, right?
So it's the
So
whole
what I just
body
showed
versus the
you,
head.
it's
Okay.
exactly right. What I
Yeah.
just showed you is the beginning of a practice where you draw that heat down into your feet and into the ground.
Okay.
And that's
Wow.
it. And if once you learn how to do it, it takes 30 seconds and you're off and running to whatever you need to do. But the results of your work is going to exponentially change.
Yeah. So we're already taking away, I think, a number of great tips, meaning, when, you retire when your work is done and knowing, how to cut it off and let go when, you're not in your zone of excellence or, performance zone. We're talking about bringing the heat down and grounding it because we're breathing in a slow and focused way. Um, what else should we be doing during the day to kind of calm ourselves down when we're feeling in crisis?
So another really simple thing is go for a walk without headphones,
Mm,
without your phone. Not long,
yeah.
20 minutes. During that walk, turn around and walk backwards 10, 20 steps without looking backwards.
Mm,
And that's it.
I've
And
never
do
heard
that.
that before. What's the story there?
You change the way your energy flows in your body, and you change because you no longer can use your eyes, right? So one
Okay.
of the things we need to get out of our eyes and we need to get out of our head.
Okay.
You will see that when you're walking backwards without looking backwards, something else is working to keep you safe. And it's
Mm,
not your head and it's not your eyes. So we're drawing the energy out. And that's it, right?
yeah.
It is that simple. That's the beginning of all those little practices.
And don't do this when you're crossing the street, though. We can agree. Okay.
Don't do this. Make sure there's not a cliff
Yeah, right.
nearby.
Stay away. We got cliffs. We got
You're not
traffic.
walking your dog that's going to freak out.
Your dog's looking at you like, "What are you doing, weirdo?"
Don't don't go through crowd. I mean, there's
Yeah,
a
no,
lot
no,
of
but
caveats
it's
here.
but what I love about that is I think what one of the benefits of this is we're so used to the norm. We're so used to walking with headphones. We're so used to walking forward and seeing what's in front of us. It's that we're sort of programmed a certain way in a certain direction. And when you can break the programming and breathe differently or walk backwards, it starts to change how your brain and your body and everything function.
Remember that what you do most, you do best. So the patterns you get into, walking forward, looking, brushing your teeth the same way, sleeping on the same side, all that creates patterns, and all those patterns, then the grooves get, remember the old vinyl records, the grooves get
Yeah,
deep
yeah,
and everything, and the needle can't get out.
yeah.
Your body and your system no longer adapt.
That's so
They're like,
interesting.
oh, I know what I'm going to do. And remember, nothing, no adaptation ever happens when the environment is static. In other words, when it's too nice outside, when there's no stimulus to change,
Yeah,
you don't
yeah.
change, right?
Do you
So
know? Do
your
you know?
adaptability drops.
A great example. So I've been doing this is not a brag or anything. This is just me talking about my life a little bit. But I've been doing Pilates for almost 2 years
Hmm.
now, and I'm
Hmm.
going to the same place, the same times with the same teachers. And there's a number of studios within my area, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to break away and I'm going to go to another. And boy, was I sore the next day. And boy, did I have a different teacher, different experience, different muscles. And I'm just like, I've got to mix it up. Like that getting into those grooves that where it's the same all the time, it wasn't working for my body anymore or my mind. So I think this is right in line with what you're saying, Arthur, that we've got to change the grooves if we want to, have listen to a different song. There we go. That's a
There
that's
you,
a Fretzin special.
so you are obviously self-aware, and you recognized that you were getting into a rut, or you were getting into a place where you were no longer changing, your body was not reacting the
Yeah.
same way. It's exactly right.
Yeah.
You did exactly the right thing, is
Mm.
change it up. See what other moves are there. See what something else is,
Yeah.
right?
Really great.
And I can tell you from my own practices, if you do something long enough, and I'm sure this is the same in the legal profession, the same everywhere else, the way you were 5 years ago is not the way now. The way you understand the law is not the way you understand it now. The way you approach the courtroom is not the same way. The way you approach clients is not the same way. You're always moving, evolving, right? You want your body to be doing the same thing.
Mm.
You want the whole system to be functioning as one rather than as different units.
Yeah. I think that's so critical, and it's not a bad thing to try new things. It's a very good thing on a number of levels, and just staying the course, eating Snicker bars, for lunch because you're busy, or not working out, or working out the same way and not changing things up, right? These are all patterns that aren't allowing you to maybe progress at the level that you could be. Um, let's transition. There's something that you had said to me that really hit home, and I wanted to just have you explain it a little bit more. How can the concept of humility help you win or help you improve?
So in Taoism, we have this principle. It's called the reversion. And what it is in order to understand the concept really, really well, we want to look at the opposite to see the contrast. So if you think, if you want to understand day, look at night, and vice versa.
Good,
If you
evil.
want to good and evil,
Yeah.
life and death,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Male and female. If you want to truly understand the concept, look at the opposite of it to see the contrast. What is the opposite? Because humility is hard to understand, and especially in our culture, we don't really practice it. There's not really a clear definition of it. When you think of humility, you think of some monks, with weird haircuts and everything, stuck in a church somewhere. That's not humility. Okay. So what is the opposite of humility? And that's arrogance. And arrogance is really easy to define. Arrogance is a closed system. Arrogance is, I know everything. It's my way or the highway. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Now let's look at the opposite. What's an open system? What is it like to be in a place where you understand that you don't know anything? So an open system is able to take in information. A closed system is not. So humility is not some crazy spiritual concept for the hell of it. Humility is about flexibility and adaptability to win in a battle. And that's the key point. All these concepts are for warriors. Warriors go to battle. Warriors want to win that battle. Humility is a fundamental principle of how to win that battle.
Yeah.
If you're an open system, you're going to be able to see the subtle little motions of your opponent or the inflections of their voice, right?
Right.
If you don't know anything, you're going to be able to say, oh, I think I know this part of the law, but maybe let me check up on it again. Let me reread it as if I don't know it.
Yeah.
See it with fresh eyes, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is the whole point. The whole point is not so you're going to become this great monk sitting somewhere. The whole point is that you win the battle.
Yeah.
And humility is the way. It is actually it is the concept in Taoism. And it's based on water, because water is one of the softest substances ever. It flows all the way downhill, but it accomplishes everything. Water created the Grand Canyon,
Right. Right.
and yet it's the softest substance.
Yeah. Wow. So we're yeah, I mean, we're deeper than we usually go on the show, but that's a good thing, right? We're changing up things too here, having you on and talking about the kind of really spiritual things. Is there any other final kind of words of wisdom to share before we wrap up and get to our game-changing podcast? Because I'd hate to miss out on one more gem from you before we wrap up.
So, and again, because I know I'm speaking to an audience of warriors, the one that are engaged in battle and every day, one of the best quotes that one of my teachers ever gave me that I still follow, and it's in line with humility, is the opponent is always smarter, faster, stronger.
Hmm.
And if you keep that in mind, you're never going to underestimate them.
Yeah.
You're always going to be on your best guard, and you're going to be able to catch everything. If you're in arrogance and you're thinking you're smarter, faster, stronger, bad things are going to
Yeah.
happen.
Okay. So that's, you know, for the lawyers, you know, we know a lot of lawyers who have, you know, pretty significant egos, and, you know, they've been around the block a few times. And I think we still have to consider, you know, even me, I've been working with attorneys, business development, you know, I do know quite a bit, and I see that through my clients and their success. I'm still always learning. I'm still always asking. I'm always reading what people are writing, and buying books, and listening to podcasts, and trying to get smarter and better, and you know, in a better position to help myself and others. But I think that really wise, really wise. Speaking of a really interesting podcast, you mentioned this podcast to me, and I perked up right away because I love history. I'm not someone who sits and like does, you know, spends hours and hours on history, you know, every day or anything. But, you know, when I go into a new city, or when I'm listening you know, reading a book, I love to, you know, read history and hear about great tacticians and whatnot. This is Hardcore History, and it's a podcast. Tell us a little bit about that.
So sure, Dan Carlin, he goes deep, and he doesn't think of himself as like this professor historian. He's like you and I, right? He reads these things and tries to understand. And what I find so incredibly useful, and he's, by the way, when you start listening to him, you just can't stop. The way he delivers it, his voice and everything is just amazing.
Hmm.
But what I find very important around history is that we're living in a society right now that gives us this illusion that we have this huge margin of error, that we could mess up, fail, and still everything's going to be all right. And in a lot of ways, we do. And that brings you into a place of complacency. When you listen about the history of the lives of people who lived in society who had no margin of error, zero, because that means that's a difference between you being alive and you being dead.
Right.
The skills they developed, the perspectives they had, the moves they did, those are the ones you want to be studying, because then you actually have a leg up living in the modern society for all those who are not, for all
Hmm.
those who think we have a huge margin of error here. And we don't. It's an illusion, but we
Yeah.
think we do.
Wow. Yeah, check that out, everybody. Hardcore History, very interesting. Arthur, as we wrap up, one, of course, thank our wonderful sponsors, Getting Staffed Up. Get staffed up, right? And I'm getting staffed up all the time with them. Lawmatics, helping us on the software to automate our marketing and automate the way we interact with our clients. And PIMCon, coming up in September, for the personal injury attorneys out there that want to have a first-class experience, and hear some of the top marketing people in the world talk about, you know, how to grow your personal injury practice. So, Arthur, if people want to get in touch with you, they want to either hear more about you, read more about you, or get in touch with you, what are the best digits?
So quantumdow.org is our website.
Okay.
Go on there. My personal email is, and it's the parent company. It's Arthur at CaliforniaDow.org. And that's the best way to get in touch with me.
Yeah. And all of that'll be in the show notes as well, everybody. Um, just thanks so much. This was, you know, look, we had 30 minutes to kind of take a deep dive and get into it. And I think, you know, 3, 4, 5 takeaways that my audience listening can say, look, I'm feeling stressed. I'm feeling like I'm not winning it to the level. I'm not, you know, having as much of an open mind as I need to. That you've given some really great takeaways for them to get on track and get back on track more likely. So just thanks so much for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. And I
Yeah.
love the Seinfeld quote.
Yeah, no soup for you, man. I'll tell you that right now. The top one at the top, Serenity Now. I mean,
Yes.
screaming with anger, Serenity Now, right? I mean, that's like the ultimate yin and yang, or you know, of the what were you saying? The white and the black, and the
Yes.
male and the female, right? Serenity Now, with an exclamation mark right next to it.
I love that.
Yeah,
Love
good
that.
stuff. Well,
Thank you
thanks.
so much for having me.
Thank you, Arthur, man. I appreciate you. And everybody, listen up. You know, just trying to continue to bring great guests to help improve your life and the way that you're practicing the law, and living the best lawyer life you can. Being that lawyer with Fretzin every single week, twice a week, guys. Confident, organized, and a skilled rainmaker. Take care, everybody. Be safe, be well. We'll talk again soon.